Hey folks, Pat here from DNS, and this Madison area fishing report is current as of September 6th. Well, I hope you all had a good Labor Day weekend. Hope you're able to get out and do some fishing. Geez, I tell you what, it doesn't feel like Labor Day weekend out there this morning. It's pretty chilly here in Madison. But that's what you get with September. Yeah, cold nights, warm days. I'm definitely looking forward to the changes that come with this time of year. The reports every week, in July and August, really, it's just kind of Groundhog's Day there, just repeating myself over and over again. But yeah, things are definitely starting to change already, and will change more. Fall's a great time to get out and do some fishing, so definitely looking forward to all of that. So we'll talk about it. Just a couple quick things here. The 2024 hook and line sturgeon season opens tomorrow. Quite a few folks come through the shop here that do that. If you do want to target, or I guess keep a sturgeon, it has to be 60 inches to be harvested, so that's a big fish. Bring your heavy gear. But you also need to get a salmon tag, sturgeon tag. So you can pick those up here at the shop, or you can go online and get them too. Um, but yeah, just want to let you know that that's happening, and it runs through September 30th. Otherwise, here again, a smarter bait tackle and fly shop owner might not tell their customers about where they can get good deals on gear, but you probably all know I'm a sucker for Southern Wisconsin Trout Unlimited. Love what they do. They're a great group. And on Tuesday, they're kicking off their meeting season with their first meeting of the year is their Micro Madness auction. So what this is members donate gently used gear. Sometimes there's estates, that donate a bunch of stuff. And it's really a great opportunity to get some great deals on some great gear. But at the same time, support Trout Unlimited. All the proceeds generated go to Southern Wisconsin Trout Unlimited. So that's next Tuesday, September 10th, at Schwegler's Lanes on Grand Canyon Drive over there on the west side. Um, they're asking, if you want to get there for food, maybe show up a little early at 6, but they kick things off at 7, and it's really great. The auctioneers super entertaining, and yeah, again, great opportunity to get some gear and benefit a great club. So there's that. Just a little bit of shop news here. Same old posters, except we're missing one here. The line workers class that I've been promoting the last couple weeks is full, so I took the poster down. But yeah, good on that group for getting a bunch of people into fly fishing. And yeah, stay tuned. I'm sure they'll be doing more of those because it filled up pretty quick. But yeah, other posters here. Northside Festival. It's like a bunch of businesses and stuff, groups from around the north side. That's happening tomorrow, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. over here at the rec center next door. And Troy Farms, just up the road, has a bunch of community events all month here. So I guess that's pretty much it for shop news. So we'll get into the report. Had a beautiful week here in Madison this last week. It was dry with temps in the 70s and 80s, but the cool nights have been letting you know that fall isn't far away. It looks like a bit of a cool down here for the weekend. It's chilly this morning, like I said, but the forecast looks warmer next week with highs in the mid 80s. But it's that dry heat, and remaining dry as far as rain goes too. The Monona buoy site is still down, but I was chatting with Noah Humfeld of Madison Angling Guide Service yesterday. He had 74.5 degrees on Monona, and so yeah, water's still pretty warm actually. I feel like it would be cooler with some of the cool nights we've had, but you can see here the beach water quality page that we've been relying on for water quality reports is all X'd out. It's not because there's a crazy algae bloom across the whole chain. It's because the Dane County considers beach season done, so we can't rely on this resource anymore. But yeah, I was, like I said, talking to Noah, and he said around the chain, the water's looking a little green, but otherwise visibility's good, and yeah, as far as tournaments go, I did look on the DNR page. There is one 50 boat bass tournament. It's a youth and disabled group that's going to be out on Lake Mendota on Sunday. So I'm not sure where they launch out of. Probably the state park. That seems to be where most of the tournaments launch out of. But anyway, just a heads up there. I guess, though, generally around the chain, the drop in the temperatures this last week had the algae blooms at bay, and the water's starting to clear up already. The fish have been in a good mood. As the water temperatures drop, we'll start to see a lot of fish start to move shallower, and I've already heard some reports indicating that, which is good news for the shore anglers. Generally speaking, although the weed lines are getting a little more difficult to find these days, they're still probably the best place to start looking for fish. Bluegill action around town continues to be good, with the majority of the fish being found on outside weed edges in 10 to 15 feet of water and in weed pockets. But I've heard about a few decent gills being caught shallower lately. Same thing on Lake Monona, but out there you've got the suspended gills, 10 to 15 feet down, out over deeper water. Those fish will start to move in shallow as the water cools, but they're still hanging out deep like that. So a small jig tipped with a piece of redworm, spike, or a waxworm is really all you need for gills anywhere on the chain this time of year. Crappie continue to be elusive, but are being found out in that same 10 to 15 feet of water on weed edges and on structure. A crappie minnow with a minnow-shaped plastic on a small jig is a pretty safe bet for those fish. Unfortunately, the perch are still really not anywhere to be found that I've been hearing anyway. Um, all around town, Monona, Mendota, nothing. So yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit more. Bass have been in a good mood around the chain. Largemouth are up shallow for the most part, and lots of things work well for them this time of year. But with a lot of weeds still hanging around, weedless rig plastics and swim jigs are good options. And of course, topwater frog bite continues to be good. Some smallmouth can still be found up shallow, but many of those fish are being found on weed lines, especially near rocky shoreline breaks and 10 to 15 feet of water these days. Like I said, I was talking with Noah. He was getting fish, smallmouth and walleyes the other day in water as shallow as 5 feet. In the weeds, but mostly rocky weeds, if that helps. So in addition to the rocky weed lines, walleyes are being found on mid-lake humps in good numbers in 10 to 20 feet of water, and deeper on sunny days. A half-night crawler, a large fathead on a jig or a drop shot is a good idea for those fish. That's not to say folks don't get plenty of fish trolling, but of course, and when the walleye move up shallow at night to feed, jerk baits and swim baits are great options. And if like I like to do, if you're casting at night, toss a lighted bobber out there with a fathead on to kind of cover all your bases. Been hearing about a couple nice muskie being caught here and there, but those fish should be in a better mood as the water continues to cool. Pike are plentiful around the chain and will eat just about anything. And area rivers and streams are all flowing at their seasonal averages for this time of year. A little more detail then up here at Cherokee Park. I drove by there the other day. It looks like the weeds are coming down a little bit, and I've heard about a couple of folks getting some bass and some small pike up there. I saw a thing online where a guy in a kayak got a nice catfish out here in the main channel. And so, yeah, speaking of kayaks, if you got a small watercraft, you can launch here at the Cherokee Park Marsh Boat Launch. Get out in the main channel there, and you'll have more weed-free fishing out there. Down to the 113 bridge, you can still catch some cats down there here and there, but it's a nice mixed bag of fish. You never know what you'll find. But most of the cats, like I've said, for the last couple months, have moved back out into Lake Mendota, and I've been hearing about those fish being picked up literally anywhere. Folks pan fishing for them, trolling for walleyes, picking up catfish. I have heard about some good action off Warner Park breakwall there and Tenney Park breakwall, but like I said, they're just cruising around out there doing their thing. Otherwise, around Mendota, the bluegill action are being found is happening out on outside weed edges in good numbers, and I've heard about several reports of folks getting them on mid-lake humps mixed in with walleyes. A few crappies are being picked up on weed edges as well, and while I don't hear about a lot of those fish, the size structure on those fish has been great. Like I mentioned, not much for perch reports that I've heard of. The weed lines over here on the west end were good the last time it kind of cooled off, so if you're diehard looking for perch, maybe check over there. Redworms were working well for those fish right on the weed edge if you can find it. Otherwise, bass have been in a pretty good mood with the largemouth being active in most shallow areas. Smallmouth can be found shallow, but many are being found on weedy rocky areas from 5 to 15 feet with some walleye mixed in. And besides the rocks, the walleyes are also being found on mid-lake humps on Mendota in good numbers with, like I said, those dandy bluegills mixed in. So you'd be looking at places like Dunn's Bar, Second Point, Commodore, Brearley bars, stuff like that. So, and those fish tend to hang out like through October, those bluegills, and the walleyes too. But the walleyes will start to move shallow during the day too as the water cools. Anyway, yeah, as far as walleyes at night, Tenney Breakwall and Warner Breakwall are also good spots. University Shoreline, I've also been hearing about some fish being picked up down there. The pike are pretty much everywhere and always hungry. Lots of smaller fish, but of course you got a good chance at a trophy. Otherwise, yeah, the Tenney Park Breakwall has been producing a nice mixed bag of fish over here. And the action below the locks can be good, but it's been hit or miss. Usually that seems to pick up whenever we get a rain. A lot of fish will push up there. But Tenney Park Lagoon's good for a bunch of small bluegills if you got a young person to keep busy, but a good population of bass in there as well. Moving down the river, I've been hearing about a few fish hanging out under the bridges here on sunny days, so that's worth a look if you're walking down the bike path there. Otherwise, out on Monona, kind of the same thing. Bluegills on weed edges. Bass are up shallow. The bluegills, though, like I mentioned in the intro, are also still suspended out over deep water. So you could be in 20 feet of water, you could be in 70 feet of water, and you'll find those fish 10 to 15 feet down suspended. And like I said, as the water cools, they will start to move in shallow, but the bluegill action off the Monona Terrace wall during the day continues to be good, although with these cool nights, I've heard that the action tends to be a little bit better in the afternoons for those fish. Good action down here in the triangles and along Brittingham Park in Monona Bay. And they've had the weed cutters in there, so some more weed-free fishing down there. Lake Wingra, choked with weeds right now, but if you can find a spot to get a bobber in there, lots of small panfish if you're keeping a young person busy, good largemouth bass in there, and the muskie are in there good, but tend to run on the smaller side. Speaking of muskie, I haven't really heard much off Lake Monona. I guess it's been kind of warm, but that action will pick up as things start to cool down. The walleye action on Monona, also, I haven't heard much going on other than some fish being picked up in the Monona Terrace Wall and John Nolan Drive area, mostly at night. Some good panfish action down here in Turville Bay and Weechawuk Bay. And moving down the chain, down in Upper Mud, I've been hearing about some good panfish action down here in the Dredge Hole. Both on the weed edge, but also some fish being found suspended in the deeper parts of the dredge hole. The flats around Upper Mud, full of bass, but also full of weeds. But I was talking with Jason Burnham, who is a well-known local tournament champion angler. He was telling me that as those weeds start to die back up here on Upper Mud, the fish don't really move out; they just concentrate more and more in the weeds. So as those weeds die back, take a look up there. You'll be finding more and more bass concentrated up there. Same thing on Lake Wingra, or Wabisa over here. Shallow areas got plenty of bass. Bluegill on weed edges. You don't really hear about bluegill suspended on Wabisa, so I'd just focus on weed edges. But I have heard about some nice gills coming out of shallow weeds, shallower than 5 feet, as a matter of fact, and near docks and stuff like that. So I guess that's a bit of a change. Haven't really heard much for walleye action other than the usual action over here between Babcock and Bible Camp, on some folks trolling this area near the breaks, but also the weed lines over there, rocky weed lines, if you want to jig or slip bobber over there has been good. And muskie down here, I don't know if I've heard of a muskie caught on Wabisa. So yeah, it's been slow for muskies this summer. Down on Keeganza, still not hearing about a ton of action down there, but I have heard about some good panfish action down here, kind of on the southeast end of the lake on weed edges. And if you're looking for walleyes, the shoreline along the state park, Williams Point out here has some nice breaks, and you'll likely find some fish over there. Down on Lake Koshkonong, of course, they've been enjoying some lower water now. And, I was looking online, the bait box on the rock down here in Fort Atkinson, they do a good job with posting reports. They were saying that now that the water is receding, the walleyes are returning to some of their more normal areas and are being found easier to catch down here. Sorry, and but I've been talking to folks at the dams that fish the dams at Indian Ford and up to Jefferson. They've been finding a nice mixed bag of fish. And some white bass. I've been hearing about the white bass bite being pretty good. But yeah, Koshkonong walleye sound like they're also turning on. What else? Haven't really heard much out of Beaver Dam Lake lately. I'm sure the catfish are still up there in good numbers. Trout are biting on Devil's Lake, and as things cool down, those fish will start to move in shallow, so you can cast at them from shore. Otherwise, out on the Wisconsin River, the river levels are about at their seasonal averages for this time of year. So look for those fish in areas like downstream areas behind sandbars, corners, where there's some good current, maybe some riffles, and also structure. So even if it's just a random stump floating out in the middle of a sand field, there could be smallmouth on there, but also, of course, trees that are hanging down in the water. And fall's a great time to get out there and fish for those fish. They're generally chasing around big schools of shad, and you can just see them busting them right on the shore or right on the surface. And just cast right into that mess, and you'll likely get hooked up. Otherwise, at all the dams, decent mixed bag of fish. I've been hearing about a lot of white bass at all the dams, Prairie du Sac, Wisconsin Dells Dam in particular. Lake Wisconsin has been had a good panfish bite in some of your shallow bays, good walleye bite trolling, but with a lot of sheepshead and white bass mixed in there too. And kind of the same thing for all the flowages and dams up the way. Dams are going to have a nice mixed bag of fish. The flowages, they've been trolling anywhere from 5 to, 20 feet of water and finding fish, but a lot of sheepshead and white bass and stuff you got to kind of sort through. Over on the Mississippi River, levels are back down, and folks are getting out fishing, finding good fish at wing dams, walleyes, kind of current seams on wing dams, some smallmouth casting right into the wing dams, panfish near shore. Been hearing about a good perch bite out that way too, if you can find a weed line. Over to Milwaukee. The Milwaukee River's flowing well. Good smallmouth bite in there that I've been seeing a few reports of some folks getting some smallies in the river there itself and pike. That action is good all summer, but pretty soon you got the salmon out here in the harbors. They're going to be pushing up into the rivers, but they're kind of right now starting to stage in the harbors themselves. Haven't heard much from shore anglers. I know Harley was up at Port Washington last night, but I didn't hear anything from him, so assuming it didn't work out that well. But anyway, salmon are out in the harbors. They're going to start moving in shallow. They're going to start pushing up the rivers here end of September, and then it's game on as far as catching the salmon around in all the rivers up and down the East Coast here. So that's an exciting time. Otherwise, I guess as far as trout fishing goes around the area, great time of year to be out there trout fishing with weeds starting to die back and temperatures cooling down. It's personally my favorite time to be out trout fishing, but area creeks have been in good shape this week, and the cooler temps have water temps back down to a reasonable level. As always, on the spinning gear side of things, Rapala countdowns, crappie-sized tube jigs, small spinners, and spoons are always a safe bet. If you want to toss meat, it's hard to beat a redworm under a bobber, drifting through runs and tailouts. Otherwise, on the fly side of things, mayfly hatches aren't very frequent this time of year. Pretty much limited mostly to mornings and evenings. Although with the cooler weather on its way, you might catch a midday hatch. So you're going to want to have some dry flies on you if you're not an early bird or out there in the evenings. But otherwise, if the fish aren't looking up, you can run mayfly nymphs and woolly buggers through all your favorite runs and pools. But if you're me, you're just fishing terrestrials this time of year. So ants, beetles, crickets, and especially hoppers right now. I've been out noticing a few more hoppers hopping around, and they're getting bigger. So yeah, for my money, I just fish hoppers this time of year. So stop in the shop, pick some of those up, and that brings us to our Happy Fly Day feature. Surprise, surprise, we're going to be talking about hoppers. Got some of the bigger hoppers here featured. This one here is my favorite one. It's I think it's just called tan hopper, but kind of a generic name. It has a great plop when it hits the water and great presentation. Trout seem to love it. Nice hook gap down here, which if you're tie flies, is important. As far as hookups go, I do like to trim off this wing here a little bit because it seems a little draggy in the air to me. But otherwise, these other two hoppers are also great. They don't have that wing, so they're not a draggy fly. This one's a little bit bigger. This is called a panty dropper hopper, and looks very realistic on the water. But these are all great options for being out there. And next week we'll probably talk about bigger hoppers where you could run a dropper underneath. But anyway, yeah, stop in the shop, get some hoppers, get on some trout water, and find some fish. That pretty much does it for the report. Do post your catches and comments below. Definitely love to hear what people are doing out there. And feel free to call the shop, 241-4225, if you want us to expand on anything. Otherwise, I do wish you luck out there. I thank you for tuning in, and we will talk to you next week. Thanks so much.